Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. It's time for me to wrap up the reading I did in June. So my reading month in June was a little bit of a mixed one in terms of the books that I read. I had 4 books that I finished plus 1 DNF, and the 4 books that I completed all scored different star ratings. So let's get into what that looks like in terms of the stats. As usual, you can skip this and move straight to the mini reviews of the books using the timestamps down below. Now this is unfortunate for me because I've just filmed this video and realised that I forgot to plug my microphone in, so there'd been no sound on it. So I do apologise if I'm skipping past anything. I'll try to remember everything that I wanted to say and indeed have already said, but there we go. So for June, for the 4 books that I finished, because I don't include DNFs in my stats, I had a total page count of 2,347. So the year to date now is sitting at 16,573. The average page count for June was really good actually. It's been increasing month on month for 2025 for just random reasons. There's no plan to it whatsoever. But in June it got up to 587 pages. So the average for the year to date now is 498. The average rating was on the other end though. This was the lowest of the year so far at 3.75. Taking the average for the year to date, I think for the first time, to below 4, it's now at 3.99. For the series stats, I've got 3 series that I've started this year, 2 that I've finished so far, and 7 where I've read the first book of the series and decided not to continue on to book 2. I've got 17 series now that are up to date, so I've read all of the books that have been published so far. 36 series that I'm ongoing with, waiting to either receive or have published the next book, or just for me to get to the next book that's already available. And I've got 56 days now. No, I haven't. I've got 58 days now since my last 5-star read, because alas, there was not one to be had in June for me. Now in terms of the books that I read, as usual, I'll start with the DNF then. This is one that was on my 2025 reading plan, and it was Embers Rising, book 1 of the Fixers by Sterling Carmichael. And with this one, I just didn't get into it. I couldn't find any depth to it basically. It sounded interesting. There was a couple of kind of buzzwords in the synopsis that I quite like, that I usually go for, including fantasy heist. That's always, or not always, but that's very often a winner for me, certainly in terms of making me want to read the book. Here though, as I say, I just couldn't get into it. I just didn't find there was enough depth to it. We did have quite a bit of politics in it, but not the political fantasy that I tend to like. Here it was more, it kind of felt like modern day politics actually. There was an election going on, and our group of kind of misfits, heroes, I don't know what we would really call them, they were deciding basically who to throw their weight behind, because the people they don't want to win, they're not going to do any jobs for people who support them basically, and the people they do want to win are the people they will do jobs for people who support the same candidates. So they go into political rallies to hear these people speak, so they know basically who to throw their weight behind. And I just wasn't interested in that. It didn't do anything for me basically. I did find as well that the chapters were broken up very kind of oddly. I don't normally see this. You'll have chapters that are broken up because they have scene changes, and that's just normal. But here I did find a couple of times there were scene changes and chapter breaks therefore that were only a paragraph long, literally 4 or 5 lines, and then it was changing to another scene, and it just didn't seem worthwhile having that for me. I was kind of taking a breather at the end of a scene, and then straight away I was needing to take a breather to prepare me for the next scene. It just didn't feel right, and it kind of threw me off my stride a little bit as I was reading, if I'm honest. So this one, by the time I got to 16%, I decided I'm not getting into it. I'm not invested in the story or any of the characters. The writing style is just a little bit too light for me, and I wasn't therefore finding any real enjoyment in it. So it was time for me to put this one down. So in terms of the books that I did finish then, I'll start off with a buddy read that a few of us in my Discord server have. This was The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. It's book 1 of Memory, Sorrow and Thorn. This is one that I've had on my provisional TBR a few times since starting my channel and kind of announcing my TBRs. I've tried to read it a few times, never actually got round to literally picking it up. I've had the intention, but never actually got around to actually starting it. So a few of us wanted to read it, and therefore we did so in June. Now, I didn't like this one as much as I obviously wanted to. It's a classic fantasy, and I do find sometimes that classic fantasy, and I'm using my own definition for this, which is pretty much any book or series where the publication date starts with a 1 rather than a 2. So there's nothing really scientific or official to it or anything along those lines. But I do find what I call classic fantasy is a very different writing style to what I therefore refer to as modern fantasy, and you do find sometimes that they are slower starting, and throughout the course of the book they may be slower paced in general. Here I thought that was a little bit too much though. I thought the pacing was a little bit unbalanced, and a lot of that was kind of weighted at the front end of the book, because I think it was about the first 25% of it I found very, very, very slow, and I just couldn't get into it. And if it wasn't for, well, first of all, listening to it on audiobook, which definitely helps for me if it's a slower paced book, but also Buddy reading it with a group of friends where we were discussing it as each of us finished various chapters. If it wasn't for those two aspects, I think I very well might have DNF'd this book in that first 25%. We were joking a few times as we were in that initial quarter of the book that there's no plot there. It just didn't seem to be going anywhere. The main character was occasionally stumbling into things, but then those little pathways didn't go anywhere until about that 25% mark, where we were all kind of joyous because Simon, our main character, had actually found the plot. Simon himself is someone who I didn't really like. I don't like the name, first of all. That's neither here nor there in terms of my enjoyment of the character, but I don't really like a what I call a normal name that I hear in everyday life. I don't like that being used for a fantasy character, which is definitely not normal everyday life. But as far as his character himself, again, we were all saying that Simon was just he's very naive, which is right, because he's quite a young character. He's not very learned in the way the world works, basically. He's had a pretty secluded life, but he's also not a very intelligent character. He makes a lot of mistakes. He makes a lot of kind of wrong moves, basically, and he doesn't really see things that are right in front of him sometimes, and we're working things out a lot quicker than he is. Sometimes you do get that, but it seemed to be taken to the extreme here for Simon a little bit. As far as the rest of the book goes, after I got through that really slow for me start, I did think it picked up quite well. I did have some enjoyable aspects of it, some nice battles towards the end of the book, and that definitely helped the overall kind of enjoyment creep up a little bit, but it was still tempered by that initial start of the book, so that definitely weighed it down, and it never really recovered there for me. It did take me a couple of days after finishing this book to come to the decision, but because of that I've decided that for now at least I'm not going to continue with the series. Maybe at some point in the future I'll move on to, I think it's The Stone of Farewell, that's book 2 of this series, but for now this is going into my not continuing column because there's just nothing there drawing me to book 2 of the series, although I do believe strongly that book 2 will be a lot better than book 1, because we've gone through what I would call the pain of that slow setup, and now we should be just into the meat of the series, or getting towards the meat of the series at least. So I think it will be more enjoyable, but there's just nothing enticing me to go and find out and see if that is definitely the case. So this one was a 3.5 star rating for me. It was enjoyable in parts, but not in other parts, and sadly those other parts covered too much of the book for the rest of it to catch up. So then I read an arc which was provided by the author. I think this one comes out in September, so not too much longer to wait, but this one is Last Among Equals by Peter J. Alden. I'd call it a military fantasy. There's a good mix of what I would call standard military here, with knights or soldiers at least, and swords and axes and bows, but there's also a good healthy dose of magic, and including within that battle magic as well. So it's a really nice kind of quite balanced and quite well-rounded military and fantasy aspects for me. I really enjoyed the characters that we've got here. We've got 3 main point of view characters, and I got on well with all of them. I liked how they interacted as well, because they came together and kind of formed different opinions of each other. There's not necessarily a lot of trust because we've got people coming from different sides and people coming from different, shall we say, backgrounds. And yeah, there's a lot of mistrust in the overall group that we're following, but certainly our three main characters who are at the forefront of the story, I like the way that they integrated, like the way that they got on with each other, and I guess came to form at least a semi-trust with each other. So I'd like to see that continuing as the series continues. The supporting characters did a good job. As I say, there was a bunch around our main three, and I like that. Well, basically they did their job really well. They supported the weight that the main characters were actually carrying, and I think that the different ways that the supporting characters interacted with each of the three as well was done really well, and you can see how they treat someone differently. They treat one of them differently to the way they treat the other two, and so forth. So yeah, some really good characters in here, some nice action sequences as well, a good bit of story, a good bit of background was given through the opening and continuing on through the series, or through the book, sorry, as we learn things, we uncover things that are not really general knowledge, but we're finding ways to figure these things out. I thought it was a really nice read. It was very flowing language, very easy to read. The chapters were varied, they weren't of a uniform length. We had some quite short ones, but some quite long ones as well. But that wasn't a problem here because I was enjoying it so much, and the pages were turning pretty quickly as a result of that. I did say about the series continuing, I don't know any details of it whatsoever, except that I've read that the author is working on 2 more books in the series. So yeah, definitely looking forward to those, because there are some threads at the end of book 1 here that are left a little bit open, so you can see the little pathways for where we may go with the story in the next book there, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So although this one's got a slightly narrower scope, you can see the threads outside of that. You can see the epic overall kind of scope of what's going on in the world. So if you like epic fantasy, if you like military fantasy but with a good dose of magic in there as well, I definitely recommend Last Among Equals. This one was not quite a 5-star read for me, but it wasn't very far off at all. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then we've got In the Ruins by Kate Elliott. This is book 6 of a 7-book series, Crown of Stars. So because I've been talking about it all year as I started book 1 in January, I'm not going to go too much into detail in this one, of course, because I don't want to continue boring people. I did enjoy this book. It wasn't my favourite of the series, and I was saying to a couple of people that in future months, when I've finished the series, I don't think I'll be able to pick out anything that makes book 6 stand out from the others. It's one in a part, basically. It's part of a series rather than a book that I'll remember on its own individual merits. That's not to say that it was a bad book. It definitely wasn't. It's just I didn't find anything that really stood out here. I think because we're coming towards the end of the series, book 7, the last book in the series, is next. I think it felt like a bit of a transition book here. We had all of the kind of the main threads. They're starting to come to a head now, and some of them are starting to come together, ready to be closed off in that final book of the series. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and hoping that it finishes with a bang. This one was good, but not great. I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then I'll finish the month with a sci-fi read from my 2025 reading plan. This one was Down Below Beyond by T.A. Bruno. Now, I have read a sci-fi series by the author, a trilogy called Song of Kamaria. I think it's Song, not Songs. And it was a bit hit and miss for me. I really enjoyed the first book, actually, but not so much the second and the third. Down Below Beyond does have little ties to Song of Kamaria, but it's not anything that you need knowledge of that trilogy for. You don't need to have read it beforehand, because there's no continuation of story or characters or anything along those lines. But in this one of the main aspects of it is basically world hopping. So that's where you get your links coming in there, basically. We have in this book, essentially it's almost like a pistol, a gate slinger, where you can create a portal or close a portal. And so yeah, we have planet hopping because people are literally portaling between different worlds that they wouldn't normally be able to get to, or certainly not in not with such ease or speed. I did find that was one of the downsides of the book for me, because it felt a little bit in places too jumpy, and there were times when, whether it's in combat or just in training, or I guess maybe a couple of them felt a little bit like play, even though they were really training. You've got people who are creating portals all over the place, and you can literally be kind of running and portal, and or falling, and you're falling through 3 or 4 different portals before you've stopped, and it just became a little bit too much. It was kind of looking around trying to find where are we, who are we with, and so forth. So it was just a little bit confused for me in some places. I did find the characters weren't really for me. They didn't have anything that I could really latch on to, so I didn't have a character who I came out of it thinking I particularly liked that character. They were all, I guess, a little bit bland for me. I just didn't like any of them, basically. I was thinking to myself that I felt the overall vibe, the feeling of the book was a bit like the movie Titan AE, and that could be a good thing, because I enjoyed Titan AE, and there are some good elements to it, and there were no kind of borrows from it. It's just kind of a vibe. I don't know what it was that gave me this vibe, but I didn't like Down Below Beyond as much. I felt that it didn't have, for me, the kind of heart that the movie Titan AE had. So that's something on me, because I feel like I wasn't really the target audience for the book, and people who maybe are more the target audience will be able to find that heart. So don't be disheartened by me saying that. It's just one that didn't work for me. I feel like the cover of this book has had a revamp. Basically, we've had a new cover for it. I quite like the original cover, which is why it's the one that I'm using here to display it. It's kind of atmospheric green filtered cover there. The new cover is a bit more cartoony. Maybe that's what helped me think of Titan AE as well. And it's one that, it doesn't really work for me. It's one that if that had been the original cover, I probably wouldn't have put this book on my radar, because I think it does actually do a good job. It is better, the better of the two covers in terms of kind of describing what you're going to expect with this book. It does suit the contents of the book, but it's not for me, and it turned out that the book also wasn't for me. So take from that what you will. Sometimes a cover really works for a book. Sometimes it can be maybe a little bit misleading. This one, as I say, I didn't really enjoy that much. I gave it 3 stars, but I know several people who've given it a couple more stars. So yeah, this one turned out to be not for me, but it could be for you. So there's my June wrap up. As I say, it was a bit of a mixed month. It was my worst month of the year so far in terms of total page count and average rating, but also my best month of the year in terms of the average page count. However, the stats don't matter. They don't mean anything. It's the individual books, and I'm definitely still loving the books that I'm reading as a whole. So yeah, that was my June reading. Anyway, how was your June reading? Hopefully you had some good reads in there. Let me know in the comments down below what was your favourite of the month. Anyway, that's it for me today. Hope to see you in the next video sometime soon. Until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.